In 50 AD, one man walked into Europe and planted the seeds of a faith that would outlast the greatest empire the world had ever seen. His name was Saul, and before he became Paul, before he changed everything, the world nearly destroyed him. He was a Roman citizen by birth, a Pharisee by training, brilliant, disciplined, and absolutely ruthless in his devotion to the law. When a movement began spreading through Jerusalem claiming a crucified carpenter had been risen from the dead, Saul didn't debate them, he hunted them. He was the early church's most dangerous enemy. When they stoned the deacon Stephen to death in the streets, the first Christian martyr in history, Saul stood there and watched, and approved. Then one day on the road to Damascus, a light, brighter than the sun, shined through, and a voice saying, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" He would then spend the rest of his life answering that one question. He became the man who planted churches across the entire Roman world, and then one night in Troas, he saw a vision, a man from Macedonia, arms outstretched, saying, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." He woke up, gathered his companions, and sailed west. What he did in Greece over the next 2 years would plant the seeds of a faith that would outlast the Roman Empire itself. It would produce theologians, martyrs, and saints whose words are still read in Orthodox churches every single Sunday. It would lay the spiritual and moral foundation of an entire civilization. This is that story.
I'm here in Thessaloniki, Greece, just touched down today. In 50 AD, St. Paul the Apostle came here to this city in Thessaloniki and wrote what scholars believe to be the oldest writings in the New Testament. Essentially, the first time St. Paul put pen to paper that we read in the New Testament, it was here in Thessaloniki. Now, the reason I came to Greece was to trace the footsteps of St. Paul. I've never been to Greece before, but I wanted to come and see the places where St. Paul preached, where he evangelized, where he wrote his letters to different churches that we now find in the New Testament. And I want to bring you guys along with me. So we start here in Thessaloniki today, but we're going to be following his footsteps in a chronological path. Tomorrow we go to Kavala, which is where he first touched down in Greece, and we're going to be following his footsteps all the way to Athens, where he ended his ministry here in Greece. So, a few places to go to today. We'll be showcasing the places where St. Paul walked, where he preached, where he struggled, where he was arrested and imprisoned, where he performed baptisms, where he wrote his letters, and showing you guys real places that you read about in the Bible in this video. This all started because a year ago I went to Jerusalem, the Holy Land, for the first time, and I saw the Bible in real person, in real life. I saw where Christ was born, where he was crucified and buried, and it's made me want to come and venture out more and discover more places that we read about in the Bible. So in this video series, we're going to be following the footsteps of St. Paul and the early church in Greece. So now we're at the Rotunda here in Thessaloniki. This was built in 306 AD by Emperor Galerius. Now, this was built 2 centuries after the time of St. Paul. He was never actually at this rotunda, but there's significance in the roots, the seeds that he planted here. This was built by Emperor Galerius to be a place, believed to be a place of worship for pagan gods or to be his personal tomb. Now, St. Paul came to Thessaloniki and he preached at a synagogue somewhere around here. I don't think it's still around, but in this general vicinity, and planted a church. He planted those seeds in 49 to 50 AD. This was under pagan rule. Now, the interesting connection with the Rotunda is this was a place where St. Demetrios was reposed. He was reposed in this area, and it was Emperor Galerius who actually appointed St. Demetrios as a high-ranking official in his military to essentially eradicate Christianity in the Roman Empire here in Thessaloniki. Unbeknownst to him, St. Demetrios was a Christian and took that opportunity in that military position to broaden Christianity here. When Emperor Galerius found out about that in 306 AD, he had St. Demetrios martyred. And this, after then, became a place of worship for Christians. So a pagan emperor built this for his pagan worship or to be a place where he was buried in opposition to Christianity. Then it became one of the greatest sites here in Thessaloniki for one of the greatest saints in the church, and became a church for quite a long time. It was later turned into a mosque during Ottoman rule. Now it is pretty much just a historical site, but that's the significance of this place here.
Honestly, I don't know, but I assume those are 4th century mosaics, obviously Byzantine, maybe 4th century. I'd have to check the date on when this became a church, but St. Demetrios was killed here in 306, the same year it was built. Built by Emperor Galerius, meant to be completely something different than what it turned into. Obviously in 313 AD was when Christianity became decriminalized, so I would assume, I don't have the dates off the top of my head, I would assume very shortly after 313 this turned into a church. And you can see, I mean, these have to be early 4th century mosaics, these icons on the dome. That's very Byzantine-esque. I mean, these are, looks like the Hagia Sophia. And also, I do know this, when this was a mosque, anytime Muslims take over a church, they plaster over the icons. You can't have icons, you can't have pictures in mosques. So some of these, you can still kind of see the plaster. This whole dome, you can see the center there, that whole dome would have been one big mosaic. It all would have been icons. And I want to assume that also the walls here would have been filled with mosaics. It's crazy how, like, the beginning of the church looks like our churches today. Like, you come back and you see 4th century churches, and we have icons. This is not idolatry. Anyways, it's very cool. And then in here, arches, you have the altar up there.
One thing I want to point out in this rotunda is a testament to the seeds that St. Paul planted here in Greece. He came here twice. The first time he came, he was met with a lot of opposition. He was arrested, and he was relentless with his ministry here in Greece. Under that time, under pagan rule, and for a couple centuries after St. Paul's time, still under pagan rule, yet St. Paul came here and he planted seeds. Greece is a place that has always been a very pious place with many different gods. The ancient Greek god Zeus, and later pagan gods were worshipped here. Roman pagan gods were worshipped here for thousands of years. This was one of the most pious places for the pagan gods. St. Paul came here with a completely different message in one of the most pious places in human history. And when you look at it today, 2,000 years later, arguably the most Christian country in the world. And places like this that was dedicated for pagan gods turned into a Christian church. And everywhere you look in Greece, in Thessaloniki, and everywhere in this country, it is one of the most Christian countries in the world, specifically because of those seeds that St. Paul planted here in this country 2,000 years ago. And you see it today, everywhere you go. So this is the ancient Agora here in Thessaloniki, Greece. St. Paul was here. I assume he would have been standing right about there on those steps, preaching to people. There were merchants here. There were businesses here. There were everyday people here in Thessaloniki passing by, and Jews here that he was preaching to. Now, this would have been probably the second stop that St. Paul had here in Thessaloniki. He would go to synagogues on the Sabbath, and he would try to reason with them and explain to them how Christ came to fulfill Old Testament prophecy and explain to them the gospel. He would then come here and preach to a crowd of people. And it didn't matter who was here, he was just coming and sharing the gospel. This is actually a location where a Jewish mob had an uprising against him. They got jealous. They didn't like what he was saying. He was challenging the status quo here in Greece. At the time, the ruling class, the wealthy people, the Jews of that day, he was a problem, a pariah to their society. And Jewish people actually rose up and had a mob attack him and try to get him out of the city. He then hid him and Silas. They hid in a man's home named Jason. And they actually had to flee his home in the middle of the night because this Jewish mob was coming for them. But this is very cool because this is a place where St. Paul stood. I mean, he could have been standing right here, would have been walking about, would have been conversing with people right here at this very spot. And standing up there, you can just imagine 2,000 years ago, St. Paul coming to this land of Greece that the message of Christ was foreign to these people. You had Jews worshiping here who denied the divinity of Christ. You had pagans here. You had people who were non-religious. And St. Paul came here with a completely different message that was foreign to these people and challenging to the status quo of the ruling class, which was dangerous for him to do. And this is where he was shortly before he left Thessaloniki. Samothrace is...
It's across, yes. I'm not sure exactly. I have to be down to say.
But that's where he first touched. That's where St. Paul first touched down. Recorded in the book of Acts, chapter 16. Therefore, sailing from Troas, we ran a straight course to Samothrace, and the next day came to Neapolis, where we're at right now. And from there to Philippi, which is the foremost city of the part of Macedonia, a colony. And we were staying in that city for some days. So St. Paul went to Samothrace, right over there. The next day he came right here. Are we gonna go to the spot where he actually touched?
Yes, yes, it's here. It's the monument of St. Paul, and there's the church of St. Andrew, I think.
So from Troas, Samothrace, to Neapolis, where we're standing now, and then from here to Philippi, where we're going next.
Yeah.
It's an icon of St. Paul getting here. Literally getting off the boat here in Kavala. It's very cool.
Because it says here, the stone that dominates in front of the monument was transported during the opening of the project from Damascus, from the place where Paul's conversion took place, when he met Jesus.
On the road to Damascus?
Yes, when he was he was pursuing the Christians.
Yeah.
And his name was Saul then. And Jesus came to him and he said to him, why you pursuing my followers?
So why do you persecute me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and it was on this rock, and then they transported it here.
So this rock would have been on the road to Damascus.
Yes,
That's
in
what it
Damascus, where Paul's conversion took place.
Wow. Right now we're in Kavala.
Yes.
What is...
In ancient Neapoli, it was called Neapoli. Kavala was called Neapoli back in the day.
Kavala, ancient Neapoli, where Paul entered Europe. This is where St. Paul first set foot in Europe.
Yes.
And where Christianity...
on land, yeah.
Yeah, on land, because he came
Yes.
from an island, but him, Timothy, Silas, and Luke landed here, and this is where Christianity started in Europe, here in this town. St. Paul, Silas, Timothy, Luke
They came, from there, from
came from
the port. The port
Samothrace,
is right here.
landed here. This was an ancient city, pagan at the time.
Yeah.
It was a Greco-Roman pagan city. It was Christianity was completely foreign to the people here.
Yeah, it was something completely new. No
Yeah.
one knew who's Christ, what's Christianity, who's Paul. So he came to a hostile environment, to preach.
And he came here and preached right there.
Yep,
And now,
exactly.
2,000 years later, it's a church.
Yes, of St. Nicholas Church.
In this whole city, everywhere you look, like every street corner is a church. On every little corner, every street is a church, church, church.
But how he ended up here in Kavala first, because he had
A vision.
a vision, yes. He had a vision in Troas. Troas is the ancient Troy. Yeah.
Oh, that's ancient Troy.
Yeah. He had a vision, and one man from Macedonia. This whole region, it's called Macedonia. Thessaloniki, Kavala, it's called all Macedonia. And men from Macedonia asked him to come and preach
And
the
then
gospel.
from here, St. Paul and the others, Timothy, Luke,
And
Silas, they went to Philippi.
Philippi, Amphipoli, Apollonia.
And that's where we're going next, right? Philippi?
Yes, exactly.
So this is the beginning. We're tracing the steps of St. Paul. He started here, he preached, he planted seeds here. You can see the fruit of those seeds. This is a completely Christian city in a completely Christian country. 2,000 years later, it was under persecution of the Romans and the Jews at that time for another 2 centuries. But you see the seeds planted here. And then St. Paul goes to Philippi, where we go next. And then we're going to follow his footsteps onwards past
on way to
Philippi.
Bavaria. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they made look the little circle there. Maybe that's where he stood. You see the kind of the standing area there you put?
In the next episode of this series, Tracing the Footsteps of St. Paul, we head to the ancient city of Philippi, where we will see the actual location where St. Paul was beaten, held in prison, and where the first Christian was ever baptized in Europe.